Have you ever wondered what real comic book FOMO looks like? Well, I'll show you. Hey there, today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to open up two FOMO orders, specifically around Ultimate Spider-Man. This title in particular caught me off guard. I knew that it was available for pre-order, and I made a conscious decision to skip it. I was around when the first series of Ultimate Spider-Man came out. It was a huge hit, written by Brian Michael Bendis, and I had always thought about collecting the entire run of Ultimate Spider-Man, but I was missing the first 5 or 6 issues. Kind of jumped on board late, really enjoyed the series, just in general, really loved the concept, and started buying every issue that came out, subscribed to the title, went back and made sure I had every issue, but never went all the way back to get issue 1 because it was very popular. And because of that popularity, very expensive. Part of me didn't want to go through that whole experience again because I felt like I had already gone through Ultimate Spider-Man. I wasn't exactly sure what to expect. And of course, the first issue came out, written by Jonathan Hickman, and became very popular again, just like that first iteration of Ultimate Spider-Man. A lot of people fell in love with the story. In this new Ultimate Spider-Man timeline, some first character appearances in the first issue, a lot of great cover artists. And when I started to see the first issue started to spike in value and being sold out everywhere, all of the incentives being gobbled up, then of course I saw the first issue going up in value. Even the incentives were being scooped up. The books at ratio were selling at ratio or above consistently. And even cover A and a lot of the other variants, the open order variants, were starting to sell for anywhere from $15 to $25. At one point, it was pretty outrageous. Some of them selling for like $60. I think some of it has settled back down, but still a very popular book, a recently released book in the late 2023, early 2024 time period, where if you're talking about full, complete pre-order FOC to release, I would argue it's probably the most popular release, Ultimate Spider-Man #1. Now, I pride myself in trying to select the best books at pre-order and FOC time, and when this happens, where I completely miss on a book, a lot of emotions run through me. I'm disappointed in myself. Why? What was the reason? Why did I specifically skip this? And what I end up doing is, again, classic FOMO, I would say textbook FOMO, is I start to scramble and research to see if there's any way possible that I can get in on Ultimate Spider-Man #1. So I ended up finding some books. I was going to say related. I mean, these are actual copies of Ultimate Spider-Man #1 that I'm going to show you, but it's not like I found a stack of 10 cover A's sitting somewhere online. I had to get a little creative with some of the books that I picked up and where I picked them up from, and of course, what I paid for them. I missed out on that 25 to 30% pre-order discount. I didn't order multiple copies. I had to kind of swallow my pride a little bit and go back and figure out if I want to get in on this, then what am I willing to pay? And I've talked about this before, where some of the struggle is if you, of course, have a hunch that a book is going to take off, then you're going to pre-order and find those incentives and make sure that you secure them before they come out on release day. But you can't always predict the future, and so would it be better off to not do any of that and wait to see which books hit? And then once they do hit, go ahead and make your investment at that point, because it's more of a sure thing. Now, that's not always true. That there's sometimes a period where a book comes out and it spikes or it peaks almost right away, and then it drops and falls back to earth with the rest of the books. But it feels like since Ultimate Spider-Man #1 came out, that it has some staying power, that people are generally enjoying the series, love the concept. And since then, other books have also popped, Ultimate Black Panther #1 in particular. Now, I am truly excited to open these because I believe that I kind of got in somewhere in the middle where the wave was starting to build up and there was a lot of momentum, but it hadn't quite reached the pinnacle or even started to come back down and correct a little bit. I think I got in at a decent time. And as I mentioned, I think I got a little creative with these purchases. Let me show you which books I picked up. I'm going to unpack these two orders, and you'll see what Ultimate Spider-Man #1 FOMO truly looks like. And then if you are a Moneyball Comics channel member, I will go through the details of the order, what I paid for the books, and compare the time that I picked these books up and when I made these purchases against today's fair market value to see if the purchase price actually made sense and did the value hold up. As I mentioned, truly, over the time period where I placed these orders, as one order in particular took a little bit longer than a typical order would, and I can explain why, and you'll see why. But if you're interested in supporting me in the channel, please consider becoming a Moneyball Comics channel member by clicking the join button below, and then you'll see all of the breakdown in my spreadsheet. I'll show you the grades that I assigned the books. But before I can do that, I have to open these and take a look at these comics related to Ultimate Spider-Man #1. Okay, here are the two shipments received from two different stores, one from Golden Apple Comics and one from East Side Comics. The Golden Apple Comics shipment was delayed because I had also added a pre-order of a retailer incentive not related to Ultimate Spider-Man 1, and that held up that order. And then the East Side Comics one was delayed because there's a special version of Ultimate Spider-Man 1 included in here. So it was kind of interesting timing. They both arrived at the same time, but for different reasons were delayed. Both sent USPS, looks to be in good shape. Let's go ahead and get these opened up. All right, I think I got through. There was so much tape and so much unpacking. Hopefully, I didn't reveal anything, but I couldn't help it. You can kind of see what's going on here with the East Side Comics order. I'm going to go through the Golden Apple order first and show you which books I ended up buying from them. And both of these orders were placed after Ultimate Spider-Man #1 was released, after it started selling out and people became aware of it, started enjoying the series and so forth. However, before I get into Ultimate Spider-Man, I just want to show another book that I did end up pre-ordering that, again, it's like a complete contradiction of what I said, but I did sort of get lucky as this book did heat up a little bit on release, and this is Captain Marvel #5, and this is the retailer incentive with cover art by Russell Dodderman. I collect these specific character iteration variants that he does, and the only place I could find it was on Golden Apple, and I ended up paying double ratio for it. And of course, I already see, like, good grief. Maybe we got the bad out of the way, and let's look at the good. And I'll show you which books I picked up from Golden Apple Comics. Here's Ultimate Spider-Man #1 with cover art by Elizabeth Tork. This was one of the open order variants. And essentially what happened with Ultimate Spider-Man #1 is all of the variants, the open order, the retailer incentives, they all popped along with cover A. Cover A, I would say, being the most desirable. And in these cases, too, the lesson learned is if you're not sure which cover to get, you don't want to buy all of the covers, stick with cover A, go ahead and get multiple copies of cover A, because I think in the end, there's something about the open order variants. They're fun to collect, as is this one. But when a book does have several variants, it does seem like collectors focus more back on cover A when situations like this happens. Now, this is an open order cover variant, cover art by J. Scott Campbell. J. Scott Campbell has done a lot of great work, but I think that as far as Marvel goes, he's synonymous with Spider-Man and also Spider-Man and Mary Jane. A lot of great Spider-Man, Mary Jane, also Black Cat covers. And they had a couple of these available, and just gorgeous cover art. Love it. Open order variants, again, that had popped along with cover A, and picked those up from Golden Apple Comics. Now, just kind of quickly looking at the condition of these, I don't think they're suffering from the same issues that Captain Marvel. The top corners on these look okay. They look fine. What you would typically want to see with your new books. So hopefully these grade out at 9.4 or above. But man, I know this is about FOMO and Ultimate Spider-Man #1, but I'm going to contact them and see what they say because it's just unacceptable. Looks like the other three books are fine. And that was it. That's kind of what ended up happening when these books started popping. It was like, I'll take any books that I can find, even the open order ones. And I paid well over cover price for these. And I had to really just kind of get over the fact that I didn't pre-order these and I didn't get them at cover price or below. However, I didn't have to FOC on every single book that came out in order to win on these or be right about these. I just didn't buy them, bought them later, and that's kind of the question is like, are you really kind of like saving money in that way? Does it matter? It's just something that I'm kind of working through. Now, let me get over to the order that I placed with Eastside Comics. This was very similar to the Golden Apple order. However, I was able to track down some incentives. And then also, you can see I got a slab on top of the order that I placed. And so I'll show the slab last, and we'll go through some of the other books here that I picked up. This is Ultimate Spider-Man #1. This is the 1 in 25 with cover art by Tony Daniel. Tony Daniel, the co-creator of Noctera, fantastic illustrator, did a lot of work on Batman. And I remember when Ultimate Spider-Man #1 first came out, this specific cover was available for maybe a day or half a day. And it seemed like collectors were not really into this one. But then once the Ultimate Spider-Man FOMO wave really kicked in, then even this book was selling out, as pretty much any variation of #1 was in demand. And so looking at the condition of this one, again, corner not what I would say to be ideal. This could be bindery tearing, could be manufacturing related. If the book is perfect otherwise, this could be kind of a pre-screen candidate to see if CGC would let that go. But this is still kind of a mystery to me on what to do with a corner like that because it looks bad. It's not appealing. But yet, if they kind of put it under the category of manufacturing, then it's no big deal, and it would get a 9.8, as it's not necessarily something that a collector mishandled the book or anything, but still there's just a little bit of a flap where it just looks a little bit dinged there. The next book that I picked up is also a retailer incentive, and this is the 1 in 100 with cover art by David Marquez. Let's quickly check the corner before I start freaking out. Little bit of splitting there, could be tearing, not exactly sure, but seems to be okay. This was a book that I actually found on Midtown Comics as well, and the copy they sent me was also dinged. I think I gave it somewhere around like a 9 or a 9.2, was really disappointed. And so at the same time I picked this book up from Midtown, I found it on Eastside Comics and bought this 1 in 100. Love David Marquez, a great cover artist. This one is interesting because there's also an open order variant by Marquez, and it's the same book, except this is the full art version with no trade. So you get more of the art on the book, but sometimes those 1 in 100s where you can just get the cover art on an open order variant, they don't always do as well as if like this art is exclusive to this variant, if that makes sense. So we'll have to see how this one grades out and how this one holds up in terms of value. Now, one thing I did with Eastside Comics, you can see here with this COA, is I noticed that they had some exclusives available to Ultimate Spider-Man #1. Now, I don't really know what to make of this, and so it'll be interesting to look at the values in terms of a hot book that comes out where there are also store exclusives. Store exclusives are kind of a market on their own. Sometimes there are rare or desirable covers, and they just kind of become popular on their own, regardless of story or anything that's happening in the comic itself. Sometimes it is related to the heat on a series. Sometimes a series or an issue could pick up in value, and the store exclusive just sits there. I think back as an example of a lot of the Venom covers, like the first appearances of Null, first appearance of Dylan, and the Dylan Brock appearance in particular. I know I have a store exclusive where it's the inside story. It's the first appearance of Dylan Brock, and at the time, the store exclusive, you could find it. It just wasn't a big deal. It hasn't really kept up in value in terms of the regular non-store exclusive distributed cover A's. And I became a little bit frustrated because I was picking up those store exclusives thinking that they should have value just like the regular open order covers. And these are like $15 to $30 exclusives or a bundle for $40 kind of situation. And the cover A was becoming, shooting up in value, and the store exclusives were being left behind. So I don't quite know what to make of this. However, going back to what I was talking about with Ultimate Spider-Man #1, the first volume, this is a homage cover to that with cover art by In-hyuk Lee. And so part of me was like, okay, a little bit of the best of both worlds. I can go back in time. I can scratch the itch of Ultimate Spider-Man #1, Volume 1, and acquiring that, a book that I missed out on. And then we've got the fantastic cover to the current Ultimate Spider-Man #1, In-hyuk Lee even mentioning Joe Quesada as part of the homage. And I really felt like these were reasonably priced when compared to the regular covers, the open order covers and variants, and thought that this would be an interesting pickup and an interesting way to add to my Ultimate Spider-Man #1 collection, and wanted to, again, kind of compare these to the values of the other books. So I ended up picking up 2 issues, COA from Eastside on both of these, and grabbed a couple of copies there. Back to the non-exclusives, this is the Ultimate Spider-Man design. This is a 1 in 10, and ended up grabbing 2 copies of these. They still do these design covers. I think collectors are kind of mixed on these. Sometimes it's kind of fun, but for the most part, I think they pass on these. One of the more recent design covers that I think was a big flop was Captain Carter #1. That book came out, was very popular. Maybe not as popular as Ultimate Spider-Man #1, but had a similar rise on release day. But yet you could find the 1 in 10 design cover of that, and I think people just didn't like it. But the theory was, for me anyway, was if all of the other issues are hot, the story's interesting, then maybe it doesn't matter. But I think ultimately the overall design and aesthetic of the book does matter. This one I think is really nice. It's showing some of the character first appearances, Richard and May Parker. So you've got that going for it, that they're actually on the cover. So if they become, and I think they already are, a significant part of the storyline, then cover appearance might matter. But again, the overall design variants, not as popular, but I took a chance anyway and grabbed these at a good price from Eastside Comics. These are the 1 in 10. Very cool of them. They sent a free book here, Spider-Gwen Shadow Clones. It even says, enjoy freebie. So appreciate that. I'll go ahead and take the slab out of the plastic so we can take a look. And first get the freebie. So free comic, love that. Thank you very much, Eastside Comics. And not a huge surprise, but it is the store exclusive that I picked up in a CGC 9.8. I wanted to go ahead and secure it. I figured, if I'm buying these and they do hit in a 9.8, I'm most likely going to be submitting them in a future pre-screen. And I would say this is Ultimate Spider-Man FOMO, where I'm buying a 9.8 slab. I don't really know how this works. I imagine that they would get a bunch in on release day and quickly turn them back around to CGC. But I really like this cover by In-hyuk Lee. The color scheme, everything matching Spider-Man's red in his costume, the homage to Ultimate Spider-Man #1, my ultimate FOMO back to the first volume, and just thought, you know what? I wanted to just lock this in and guarantee the 9.8 on this store exclusive, and just figured, again, with it being kind of a limited edition, all of the heat surrounding Ultimate Spider-Man #1, that it would be kind of worth it to go ahead and pay the money to secure it. I think what's going to be interesting is looking at kind of the wave of values and just to see how long will Ultimate Spider-Man #1 stay hot. But if anything else, maybe I cured some of my FOMO a little bit picked up maybe a better copy of the 1 in 100 David Marquez, got a free comic, and also got that Captain Marvel book that I get to contact Golden Apple about and see how they are going to resolve that issue. So kind of an interesting couple of orders. I feel better now having secured these great books, great Ultimate Spider-Man #1 comics. And those were the books that I picked up from Golden Apple and Eastside. I feel better. I do. I'm trying to think about how I feel about these orders. Of course, looking at what I paid for them and making this initial investment, I'm very happy to have these in my collection and secure them in case this series skyrockets. But there is part of me that feels like, what if I had just stayed off the book altogether? Like, would everything have been okay if these two orders didn't exist? Would I have been happy with seeing a lot of the hype and not being able to participate? I'm not sure. That there's part of me that just feels like, okay, I've essentially taken any kind of negativity or those feelings of FOMO, and I've squelched them. I've kind of cleansed these comic book emotions, and I just wonder, is it more about that? Is it more about feeding FOMO a little bit and allowing myself to just experience it, spend a little bit extra, do things maybe that I would say are a little bit out of the ordinary for me in terms of trying to stay true to finding books of value, high ceilings, instead of buying into something that's already either going up in value or potentially even inflated value. And so sometimes I wonder, is it about the comic books or is it about my feelings or my emotions? I would say in general, I do feel better. I feel good. I don't feel like I have to now continue this hunt for Ultimate Spider-Man #1 books. I'm not going to start digging around or traveling the country, going to LCSs to see if anybody has like a copy sitting on the shelf. I don't need to do that anymore. I can move on to other things. So for me, it's probably worth it for me to have gone through this, because then I can just kind of move on instead of trying to add these to want lists and kind of obsess over them. And that's part of what I think has to happen as a collector, is you have to go through this sometimes just so that you can move on from the distraction of other people having certain comics or titles that you didn't pre-order that are popping on the market. I know it's kind of a weird explanation, but it's almost like you have to train yourself to either ignore it and not be bothered by it, or give in a little bit, get a taste, and then move on after that. And I typically try to get in on it, even if it is going to cost me a little bit to buy in, and maybe I'm late to the party. But then I feel like, hey, I'm showing up. I'm here with everybody else. Let's see where this series goes. Let me know what you think about these pickups, how you deal with FOMO. I'd love to hear your stories and your comments about how you deal with it. Do you deal with it in a similar way? Do you have your own methods? Let me know by leaving a comment on this video. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.